So, okay, I wanted to go over some of this investigative report with you guys. I'm not going to show it because it has some identifying aspects into it that could identify some of our 3 unnamed victims that are going to be in this. So, the role players in this report are Detective Kristen Parnell of the Lake Stevens Police, and then we've got our 3 unidentified victims who are between 15 and 16 at the time of this report. Then we've got Mark Hein, who's 55 at the time of this report. And one thing that we learned pretty quickly here is that this report didn't come from any of the victims. It didn't come from any of the parents. It didn't come from anybody telling on anybody. It wasn't a setup. It wasn't any of that. This investigative report started because one of the girls was in therapy, which is, hey, if I just side note, plug for therapy. If you have some issues you're trying to work out and you have an opportunity to do therapy, do it, and don't worry about any stigma, because that's bullshit. The fact that you can get a professional to sit with you and you can talk to them and work out some stuff and work on being a better person proactively, take care of some of your demons, in a pre-approved time instead of when you're doing 80 on the freeway. It's all a good idea. So kudos to anyone who's doing that. So anyways, during one of these sessions, the therapist just noticing how this girl, is athletic normally. Well, she's always athletic, healthy, straight A's, all that kind of stuff. Like, she's seeing some decline, like grades are down, depression, and starting to be some like PTSD type stuff going on, which is just really disconcerting to the therapist, because what the hell is going on that is traumatizing this girl so much? And basically the therapist, suspects that there's a grooming situation going on up at Lake Stevens. And so she tips off authorities, basically, and authorities in Lake Stevens both start doing investigations into Hein. That gets Kristen Parnell's side of the case, and she starts her work by reviewing the notes from the therapist, and that's where I'll pick it up. So we've got our detective reviewing the therapist notes, and the therapist is talking about what the girl has said that made the therapist concerned. So here we go. The victim told the therapist that Mark made comments to her that made her feel uncomfortable. She said that Mark had her sit next to him in the middle of class, that he touched her, that he passed her handwritten notes during class asking about personal information, such as who her boy crush was. Mark also sought out the girl's boyfriend and asked him what she likes as a girlfriend and what the two of them do together. This guy, dude, he's just, what a fucking sleazeball. So what does you guys do when you're together? Bet you're breathing real heavy too. Mark also sought out, said that already. Mark also reportedly changed her grade to an A, and when she asked him why he did it, Mark replied, "Don't you need a better grade?" As a result of her encounters, this talks about some of the symptoms that she had, and I don't want to get into the specifics because they're pretty specific, but this is traumatic residue of the stuff that he was doing to her, and it's dark, and the fact that we keep getting these vampires that think they can come in here and walk around the school like they're the big swinging dick and just suck energy out of children. These girls aren't children. They're 15, 16, but you know what I mean? Innocent people that parents have trusted Mark and, his bosses with taking care of the kids. Your job is to teach them, to make sure they're safe, first of all. That's all of our jobs, actually. And I think that a lot of us have looked the other way for far too long. Well, groomers have put their filthy, stubby, dirty hands all over them for years now. And, I hope that the bravery of these girls and the opportunity to get a clean break from the molesters and the groomers and the whatever you want to call Mark, the charges against him have been dropped. We need a clean break from these types so that kids can just go to class in school and not have to worry about this shit, We owe them that much. So Okay, so the investigation starts, and it starts with the detective kind of looking at this victim and Mark to see what's going on. So here we go. Victim's mom emails several images related to this case, including pictures that the victim took of some of the notes that Mark was writing to her. 55-year-old dude passing notes to a girl, huh? And he's making a production of it too. It's just so stupid. So Mark exchanging emails, notes. The handwritten notes include a message to the girl in which one party is apologizing for something and states, "I thought you and I were good." That's obviously Mark doing passive aggressive control on her. A couple times he's asking about who's the boy crush, and just all these ham-fisted attempts to try to insert himself in her personal life. I hate it. So then, just gonna see if I should read this part or go to the next one. Okay, no, we'll do this one. So there's a interview between a girl and a specialist here in Everett, and so we'll pick up there. During the child forensic interview, this is the same girl. Says the year she came to Lake Stevens. I'll skip that. Says her relationship with Mark was her math teacher, and at the time she was in Mark's class. Mark was the coach of the varsity basketball team and a Young Life group leader. Mark learned that the girl was involved in a external athletic deal, and he was very interested in this external athletic stuff as opposed to a sports team or whatever at the school. Always trying to find out when her off-campus stuff was going on, which is a bit weird. But only beginning to crack the beginning. So, okay, so the victim was initially assigned to a seat at the back of the classroom, but she was right away moved to a seat front of the classroom, directly center in front of Mark's desk. The closest student to Mark, dead center, facing him. Not that he likes her or anything. Jeez. So she's moved to there, and you'll get to see as this gets described more, and I might skip it. The girl is very conscious of the fact that people are noticing this, that she's being put on a pedestal by a guy that she's not asking to do that, which is a very uncomfortable feeling. It's a very presumptive of him to do that kind of stuff, and by bringing all that attention to her is not something that she is asked for. She's asked to be able to sit in her seat and do the math, and he's not allowing her to do that, even though a groomer like him is doing it the way he's doing it so that he can say, "Oh, I'm just trying to help. I'm recognizing her. I'm giving her a better seat." Well, nobody asks you to do that shit, and if you need to do that, you can do that for the other kids too. So anyways, he moves her from the back to front and center, like right across from him, right? This is crazy. This is where it starts to get crazy. So after she got moved to that seat right in front, Mark rotates the rest of the kids in the classroom like every couple of weeks or whatever. They get reseated, new seating chart made, but she doesn't ever change her seat. She always has to stay right next to him. And she asks him, and why am I not rotating? Well, why do I always have to be here? He said, "Just leave it. You want me next to you in case you need help, right? You need to keep me next to you in case you need more help." Okay. So carrying on, each class, Mark would typically teach his lesson, then hand out worksheets for the students to work on for the remainder of class. Once the worksheets were handed out, Mark made the student move from her assigned seat. Listen to this. Mark moves her from her, this is every day. Mark moves her from her assigned seat directly in front of his desk, facing her, facing each other. He pulls a desk that is located behind his out. he's got a big teacher's desk facing the students. So he pulls one out that's behind, and he pulls it parallel to his and puts them together. So it'd be like she's sitting here. He makes one big long shared desk, and he and the poor girl now face the students together. Like it's King Mark and his self-appointed queen that he's now going to force to sit next to him every day for the next 40 minutes. Super weird. And imagine if you walk by and look, through the window of the classroom and see that. And it's not just that he makes this big production, like every time. It's just he makes a big production, and I'm sure that the major motivating force of it is that he can get her very close to him within touching distance, and he can control that, exert that power over her, and in front of all the kids there, all her peers claim ownership of her. That's what he's trying to do. Now she never lets him do that. That's what he's trying to do. Like nobody takes her soul or anything like that. She's always in complete ownership of herself. She just has to put up with this shit, is my point. So he does this production where he lines up the two desks side by side and here, and he says stuff like, "In case you need help, I'll always be right here." It gets to be more and more disturbing, though, that as he's doing this every day, he pulls her chair right next to him each time. And more, he's pulling her next to him and entangling himself with her as he pulls her chair right there. Like he would be facing her, a little bit and sitting there mansplaining like a big douchebag. And, I'm sure she's much, much smaller than him. And, he would just pull her chair like inside like his legs so that she's then enveloped in there. Or it says that he would position it so that their legs were like intermeshed, so that one of her legs would be in between his or vice versa. And then, he'd like close his so that you go from like this to like interlocked, he'd like lock her in. So, he's wrapping his legs around the poor girl. It gets worse. So this is what she can expect, right? And you wonder why she's having such a hard time. She can expect when she's going to this class that she'll get about 10 minutes at the beginning before he does this desk switcheroo, summons her up to the front, makes her face her peers, pulls her close to him, pulls her body inside his circumference of his legs and arms and wraps his legs up in hers, and then basically holds her there for the rest of the class. And then he starts the rubbing. Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit before that just to cool down a little bit. So the girl shows the investigator pictures on her phone she'd taken during class just so that she can demonstrate the proximity to Mark when she was required to sit at the desk beside his. She discreetly took the pictures to show her mom because, they were so tied up together. She had to feel like, she didn't want him to see because, so she's taking a picture while he's not looking, and only because she needs some help to get intertwined from him. I mean, it's just so fucked up. Exonerated though, right? Yeah. So one of the pictures shows what is a male sitting in a chair, writing on a math worksheet, with the upper thigh and knee of someone wearing leggings sitting in a chair facing him. So facing him. The male's right knee appears to be touching the other person's left knee. So I think that like he's like this, and then he pulls her in so that like they're here, but like he's much bigger. So when she's in there, he can like exert more power over her. Super, 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 super gross. Predatory. There's a lot of room for guys like this at the bottom of the lake. Okay, so she's showing the investigator the discrete pictures she'd have to take to try to get some help on this. And then the investigator is explaining what these pictures show. One of the pictures shows what appears to be a male in a chair writing on a math worksheet. The male's right knee appears to be touching the other person's left knee. The victim identifies Mark as the male and herself as the person with the legs intertwined, etc. The victim stated that their proximity to each other and body positions in this picture was typical of how they sat when she was required to sit behind Mark's desk. If she moved her knee away from Mark so she was not touching him, he would move closer in order to maintain physical contact with her. So she can't even choose to move away. He'll pull her closer. While the victim was sitting at the desk behind Mark would regularly rub her thigh and arm. She demonstrated how he rubbed her thigh by rubbing her own thigh. I think that when something like this is in this, you really need to think about it and visualize it, because if she is going to go through the emotions and time of reliving this so that the benefit of other people who don't have to go through it, then the least we can do is not just go through the words. You can take a minute and think about what the fuck this was like. Okay, so we're going to do that. And imagine how much worse it would be when it's a 15-year-old girl. It's like, who cares about my leg, But we're gonna try to visualize what his hand was doing and how sick and wrong that is. So let's see. Can you see? Yeah. Okay. Mark would regularly rub her thigh or her arm. She demonstrated how he rubbed her thigh by rubbing her own thigh. She placed her open hand palm down on the top of her upper thigh. She rubbed her hand along her thigh until her fingertips reached her knee. Then rubbed her hand back up her thigh to the approximate starting point. That is a very fucking intimate movement. Totally inappropriate. But just, it's not padding or anything. It was described from the knee to the top of the thigh. Top of the thigh is right here. Top of the thigh is like hip. That's thigh until it hits right in here. So he is sick. We don't need to do a demonstration for the next part because you can just understand what's happened. So that's the norm, right? He's doing that on the regular. That's just for him to do, I guess. He physically moves her there, traps her inside his damn legs, in front of all the kids in the class. Imagine how petrified she is, This is not fun. And when she gets immobilized there, that's when he can start working his fingers on her leg. So Mark would also rub her arm in a similar fashion. He touched her thigh at least one time each class. Touched her. So every day he's touching her thigh and arm, and we saw how he touches her thigh. I mean, this is how a guy touches his fiance, right? In an appropriate relationship. He is skipping so many boundaries, and he's doing it on Front Street to, take ownership and humiliate and to just everything evil. Just add it to the list. He was trying to do it. We're almost done with this part. We got to catch this part, okay? Pay attention. Touched her thigh one time each class. Okay, check this out. The girl was wearing pants every time he rubbed her thigh, but several times she was wearing a pair of jeans that are ripped on the thigh. A lot of girls, guys have stylish ripped jeans. Oh, he looked forward to that because when she wore those jeans, Mark would touch her bare skin when he rubbed her thigh. And I'm going to just not go through the blow by blow here. He would take his grubby little fingers, his grubby ass old man fingers, and he would do his normal stroking. And then he'd jam his little fingers in the crevices of the cracks in the jeans, work his fingers and hands in there so he could touch her skin, just jamming them into her. Imagine again seeing this. Like, I'm happy to report that one of the next sentences is that some of the people in the class said something. Somebody should have brained him while he was doing this, but and let me just say that you shouldn't brain somebody, but if unwanted touching, if somebody you know is in a situation like this, you don't need to get violent, but you have all the permission you'll ever need to do the right thing. If somebody's getting hurt, or if somebody with power is exerting power over somebody with less power, you're already entitled to stand up in that situation and make yourself counted, okay? So don't be a bystander if somebody needs your help, especially if it's one of your friends, and be smart about it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be violence or anything, but you can call them to account, even if you just went right up there and said no and just, made it uncomfortable for them. That's a lot better than nothing. And, it's not always easy to, if you're the one this is happening to, like for the Vic, I know that the report does document when she says no to him a couple times, and he just straight ignores her. He not only ignores her, he rebuts it and says yes. And she says that makes her feel crazy. That's the description. And I can totally understand that. What I don't ever have to deal with is that, I'm 6'2", 200 pounds, 195 pounds, something like that. There's no equivalent of what Mark is to her. Mark's 6'3". There's no 7'7", 400-pound guy that I'm going to turn around and he's always going to be trying to hug me and jam his hands into the seam of my jeans. The size difference is something that a lot of guys don't think about when you have to consider how disconcerting and scary it can be for girls dealing with these serial predators and stuff. It's not just that they're whack and rude and all those things. They're giants, man. Like, it is exactly the same proportionally if you're a 6'1" type guy as having a huge 7-foot monster following you around, and every time you turn around, the Undertaker is there trying to sit in your lap. I mean, that's scary shit, right? That's stuff of nightmares. Okay, so we're still talking about the jamming the hands into the jeans. I'm going to stop after that. So they're going to describe that, right? Mark would rub her arm, then he rubbed her thigh, jamming his fingers into the seams of her ripped jeans. He started getting more aggressive with his touching, and then he would start doing it under the table or when it seemed like people might not be watching. Here it describes it one time when she told him not to touch her. When she did, Mark just said, "Why? I'm not doing anything," and he never stopped. I mean, what a fucking dickhead. I'm not doing anything, as he kept doing it. So he doesn't even matter to him that she doesn't like it, and she said no, it's still just his to do. I mean, just some people just can't be rehabilitated, so, I mean, I think they'd make good mulch, though. She said his response made her feel like she was crazy, so she didn't want to keep saying it. Mark started rubbing her thigh more and more. 2 weeks into the school year, and then from then on. Because she told him no. She said no. And again, she's not just saying no to some. He's jamming his fingers into the cracks in her jeans so that he can get at her thigh, the bare skin of her thigh, on the daily in front of her peers. This is disgusting. And she says no. And he says, "Why? I'm not doing anything wrong." And he just picks up the pace. They call this exonerated, but like enough joking about that. Some places would call that rape. We'll call it assault for sure. But when you consider that she's pinned inside his legs or trapped under the desk, wrapped up with him, and he's just got her immobilized basically. Imagine being her dad and knowing that this is what's going on. Or imagine if that's your daughter or your sister or your girlfriend and you walked by and you saw that. Would we not kick the door off its frame and be on him before? I mean, there's nothing to talk about at that point. He's exerting ownership over a living person, whether she's related to you or not, but especially if it's somebody that you love. I mean, the nerve of him to treat not just a human, but somebody's daughter in our community, somebody here that pays his salary, right? Direct trust, not just abstract trust. Might as well be your neighbor, your brother. Take care of my kid. While I go to work, that's the social contract. Social contract isn't get as far as you can every day and trap her until she's paralyzed with fear. This investigative report is like 17 pages. We're 1.5 pages into it. We're going to stop after this. I just wanted you guys to see how he operates, and how disgusting it is, and the kind of situations he puts these poor girls in. But I'm also going to kind of fast forward to the end so that we can hear the detective talking to him. I will add here that more than one student in the class did reach out to the girl regarding Mark's interactions with her, saying that they were very concerned about it, that it was awkward to watch. Some people suggested that she tell because it's not okay. Then there was another student in the class who didn't even really know her. They didn't have a relationship prior. This person sat in the back, didn't know her well enough to have contact details on her, but was so worried about what he was seeing that he found her on Snap, where he was able to message her, obviously without getting permission beforehand. And he was just messaging to say, "Hey, listen, you look really uncomfortable. Are you okay?" And it just breaks your heart to think that that's the condition they're in. You're not thinking much about math then if you're that person, if you're her. That's why you start having PTSD type reactions, like they were saying later. So all right. So this kind of crap goes on and on different victims too. And eventually basically he is officially notified to stay away from these kids. Notified at the building level, notified at the district level. They have investigations and they find him wrong on that stuff. They notify him he's not allowed to be around them at all. And he continually stalks her, shows up where she's going. She takes classes at different wings of the school. He'll show up there. He'll come right into the class, into some other teacher's class, and he'll rub her shoulders or put his hands in her hair. It's horrifying. Horrifying. We're not going to go through all that. I just want to get to this part here where our detective goes through all this, and then it gets to the part, I guess, where she is ready to see if she can interview Mark. Do you think Mark's going to be smart enough to lawyer up? Yeah, right. It's just a girl lawyer. Okay, let's see. I'm just trying to find the break where the investigator starts the police. Okay, here we go. Suspect interview. Mark was interviewed regarding this case on August 15th. Mark told me he knew the school had investigated victims' complaints against him, which resulted in a letter of direction being issued to him due to boundary type invasion. So pay attention here. He is acknowledging, Mark is, on August 15th, that the school district has issued a letter of direction, which is a big deal. That's like a union thing. There has to be an investigation first. So there's an investigation and a finding that he's done a boundary type issue. They found him in violation for doing that weird shit that we just covered. Okay, and that goes into his file. And he's directed to stay away from her. This is not good. This is not exoneration. This is not the vindicated hero that he described himself as. That's all lies. Mark was interviewed regarding this case. Okay, he knew about the boundary type invasions. That's what they call it. That were uncovered by the school's administration. He said the letter directed him to not engage with the victim, and he described the situation as really unfair to me, he says. Okay, so she doesn't want him around, and so the district tells him to stay away from her, which is really unfair to him, because obviously he should still be able to have access to her even though she doesn't want him around, right? Let's not be unfair to the guy. Think about how the sociopathic notion that he just said that to the detective. He said that it was really unfair to him that the district was keeping him away from her when she wanted him away from her. It's like he has no self-awareness, right? Like that's how he starts the interview. Really unfair to him. Mark brought up the complaint about him repeatedly trying to get her to go over overnight camps. Yeah, that's weird. He denies it basically and says, no, I was talking to a whole group of kids and not her. And then the detective's like, I talked to those kids and they all denied that what Mark said happened. So basically he was only talking about overnight trips to one person, the person he was trying to do an overnight trip with. Mark stated that regarding the seat stuff that we talked about where she was in the back and he moved her front and center, he said that was just because she couldn't see, so he's helping her out. He claimed that any communication he had with her about her boyfriend or boys was her bringing it up to talk to him for advice, right? He said all the handwritten notes were initiated by her. So you see what he's doing here? He is calling her a liar and blaming her, the 15 or 16-year-old kid. He's blaming her for the shit that he did to her. Now, we don't know for a fact what's what. Let's just assume that it's highly likely that he's lying in each one of those cases. But even if not, it's some bullshit, dude. Like, come on. She had nothing against. All she wanted was space. What she was asking for was not unreasonable, you know? Okay, so when eventually we didn't cover this, but she gets to the point where she starts transferring out any classes that he's in, which is smart. And he pressures her about it. He always questions her. Why do you do it? You know, what's happening? And she has to answer those questions, and it's tough. You know, she's always very classy about it and stuff, but he's always like, is your mom making you do it? Like, why do you hate me? And like all this like manipulative bullshit. She's always just like direct, to the point, takes responsibility. By that, I mean, she's just not like putting the blame off on other people or putting anybody else in the pot, you know? Let's see. Mark later learned that she had taken a picture of one of the notes and used it as evidence against him. He said to the detective that he didn't normally pass notes, but there was 4 or 5 times when class was quiet that they started passing notes to each other. See, he says that like that's normal. Well, yeah, I guess there was 4 or 5 times that we start. You're 55, dude. You're the teacher. You're not passing notes. Fuck. He said he had some regret about that because he wished he'd just spoken with her directly so that her conversations had not been documented. Dude, he has no self-awareness. The detective says, do you regret having those note conversations with her? And he says, yeah, because if we just spoke directly, they would have been documented. That's crazy. Mark said he thought there was one time he did initiate a handwritten note with her. One time I might have, but I don't remember it. Right. He denied ever asking for any information about her external events. Another thing was Mark had a bunch of candy, and the stories that she tells and the other two girls, and like especially for the first girl, he would only give it to her, and he would say that it was her candy, and he would like make a big scene out of giving her all this candy in front of other kids and jamming it in her bag and stuff, and just like super embarrassing for her, but like, oh, that's your candy and stuff. And so when the detective asks him about it, he says, I have a container of candy and gum that I keep in my desk. From time to time, she would ask for some of it, and I might give her a piece of it. But that candy is there for everyone. And sometimes he gave it out to other students if they asked. He gave candy to students for correctly answering certain questions. Detective says this. Note, in my interviews with Mark's other students, I was told by all of them that it was very rare or never for Mark to give out candy. It was very rare or he never gave out candy at all to any students other than the victim. So they call him on his lie. Then the detective asked him about the contact stuff. Let's go through that. Then we're going to stop for now. This is good. You got to catch this. When asked if he's ever had any kind of physical contact with the victim, Mark told me when the victim sat next to him to get help, she would scoot her chair so close to him that their shins would touch. Mark demonstrated this by scooting his chair close to mine and touching his leg to mine, holding his shin against me so that the proximity of his body to mine, coupled with the physical contact of our legs in the position he held it, made me very uncomfortable, and under any other circumstance, I would not allowed someone with whom I did not have a close personal relationship with to sit that close to me or touch me in that manner. That's what Mark did to the detective during the interview. I repeat, he demonstrated how he would sit by wrapping himself all up on her so that she was super uncomfortable to the point that she had to write about it. No self-awareness, sociopathic behavior. He does it again in this same interview too, I think. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Towards the end of the interview, I asked if Mark could think of anything I might learn from talking to other people that would support the victim's version of the event. So, open-ended question. Could be anything. After thinking about it for approximately 12 seconds, he said, the only thing I'll elaborate on, and then he elaborates on the previous thing where he touched the detective's leg by doing it again. The only thing I'll elaborate on is sometimes she would put her foot like this, Mark demonstrated, pressing his shin against mine again at the same point. And then I wouldn't necessarily take it away right away, said Mark, as he pushed his leg against the detectives and waited a minute to move his leg away from the detectives. I started to, dude. I don't even know what to say. I think we should just sign off there. Right? Actually, we shouldn't sign off there because the detective's conversation goes through a couple more things with Mark. He never really denies any of the worst stuff. He lies about some petty things. When the instances occur where he is asked not to have contact with these people, with these victims, he always has some lie about, oh, they ran into me or they wanted to see me. It's just embarrassing. It really is. He even goes so far as to say that, like, really the issue was that the girls had a crush on him. He says it to the detective. So he says one of the girls had a crush on him. That's probably what the problem was. And then the detective says, did you ever find any of your students attractive? What do you think this guy says? You think he's smart enough to get out of this question? Mark admitted to finding some of his students attractive, but denied ever pursuing a romantic relationship with one. I asked if he fantasized about his students, the detective says. Mark said, I would say just like you're a human being, so you notice that people are attractive. You notice whatever characteristics they have as a human being. But it's, that's something I've tried to be really disciplined about is in terms of letting it fester in my mind or anything like that. He trailed off. Mark described victim 1 as a, quote, striking girl, but denied any sexual attraction to her. At this time, I hold probable cause to arrest Mark Hein for assault in the 4th degree with sexual motivation, sexual misconduct with a minor in the 2nd degree, and communication with a minor for immoral purposes. Age calculations. Victim 1 and victim 2 were 15 years old at the above described incidents. Mark Hein was 55 and a half. Mark is 38 years, 6 months, and 26 days older than one victim, and he is 38 years, 8 months, and 6 days older than the other. That's the end. Checkmate. 38 years. Dang. Hey, good job to our Lake Stevens girls putting up with this individual. Super proud of them. Really, when you read the whole thing in whole, they're heroes. There's so many instances where he is so inappropriate, so emotionally taxing, and they just react with dignity and without giving him anything to grasp onto as far as like emotional reaction, because if they respond with emotion, like he will take that and use it to ramp things up. That's what he wants. They're super mature about it. They're very, very smart. They never throw anyone else under the bus. A lot of times he starts trying to talk about like their boyfriends and stuff. He wants to put himself right in the middle of their relationships and get all the details. And over the course of this time, it's a year and a half or whatever, some of the girls will break up with a boyfriend or whatever. He'll find out about that and he'll try and get details. Was he not good enough or whatever? These girls never say anything about even their ex-boyfriends. They're super respectful of everybody in their life. They're loyal. They are so far beyond like what he deserves to be around or teaching or near that it's sickening. But I'm proud that we have students and young individuals like this coming up through Lake Stevens, and we just got to do a better job of taking care of them, and it's so much as to give them a clear runway to walk through the school without these dudes jamming their stubby, dirty, shredded nail, dirty ass, bloodstained fingers into their jeans. Sickening. We will revisit this cheery topic, I'm sure, more, but in summary, there's not a lot of exoneration here, people, and whether or not charges are refiled against him, I kind of think it's beside the point, because nobody in Lake Stevens is going to put up with this shit, and he's been exposed. The girls and the detective did a great job, and between this and between the fact that he was already charged with 6 sex crimes, required registry, and the sex offense, that's going to follow him around. And this here, the details in it, when parents find out about this, I don't think you can survive this. And you just don't think so. Not in this. You shouldn't be able to. Survive, like professionally. But, yeah. Anyways, thanks for spending some time with me. I'm exhausted. Sorry for not being super clear. But I'll catch up with y'all later. All right. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, J425Baby, J425Live. And subscribe to the paper. You can do the free one. It really helps. Thank you. Bye. Oh, good morning, everybody. Today was a long day. Tell you what. A lot of ups and downs in that one. Starting off with that arraignment that didn't happen, and then, everything's dropped to that Herald article coming out claiming exoneration. And then the file came out. The investigative file came out, and it is classic. It is so good. We're going to get into that a little bit, but This guy is such a dipshit. He is one for the ages. But I just wanted to go over a couple things because the Herald is obviously some sort of penny ante amateur PR campaign going over there, where evidently now for a couple bucks you can get your own lawyer in the subhead to declare that you've been exonerated, which is that's hard hitting. And I feel sorry for whoever wrote this story. This kid, he's got like one byline before this. He was writing about frisbee golf up at Western Front, and they bring him down here to do this hatchet job where the lawyer dude declares him exonerated before the story even starts. I mean, just embarrassing for him. Let's take a look at this Herald story real quick here. So let's make it bigger. There we go. Charges dropped for Lake Stevens teacher accused of harassing student. We'll do some fact checking here. Was he accused of harassing the student? No, he was accused of six crimes against minors, which is worse. That's worse than harassment, because you have to register as a sex offender for life if you get even one of those, but harassment is like much less. Although I should note that Mark Hein does have a harassment beef on his record, and it's fairly recent. I don't know if anybody's ever looked into it, asked him about it. Might have a temper problem. Don't know. It was against a woman. Yes. So here we go. Lake Stevens teacher. Charges dropped for Lake Stevens teacher accused of harassing students. Not accused of harassing students. Prosecutors won't pursue misdemeanor sexual assault charges. But wait, I thought it was harassing. Sexual assault, harassing. Same. Also not a misdemeanor. Gross misdemeanor. So prosecutors won't pursue misdemeanor sexual assault charges against Mark Hein, who, quote, has been absolved of all wrongdoing, his attorney said. No shit. Well, his attorney said, okay, great. Well, case closed then, right? Prosecutors dropped the misconduct charges Monday against the Lake Stevens High School teacher and church volunteer who'd been accused of harassing a student for months. It's like somebody came in here, an editor or something. Hey, you guys, welcome to J425 Live again, the J425 show. Well, I wanted to get with you pretty quick this morning because we got the investigative report late last night, and I've made a little video about the Herald article and how silly that thing is, where some dude that was writing for the Western Front like a couple days ago shows up out of nowhere to write this super important article, and the first thing that happens is the subheadline is given to Hein's, the lawyer, who exonerates him in the subheadline. That's some real good journalism there, isn't it? And then not just that, the lawyer is given like this spot, this spot, and this spot, and she restates the entire investigative report incorrectly. She says it's about harassment. She says he's exonerated, and she says that like every student in it only talks about how great Mark is. It's just a whitewash, sophomore bunch of bullshit. And so it's hilarious, but it's also not funny because the Herald left. They're in Tacoma now. They don't have any reporters here, and that was a big fuck you to our girls up here, and it's a fuck you to our detective. They put the detective down by name in there, and they questioned her integrity, and they were also questioning the integrity of our girls, and they were siding with one side in an adversarial process. The 55-year-old dude accused of the molesting and all that shit, he's actually not accused at this moment. I should be clear. Charges were dropped, still under investigation. But point being, I felt like the Herald was super disrespectful to Lake Stevens. It was a cheap shot. It wasn't given the seriousness it deserves. And I don't think that we should be friends anymore.